Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Nancy Diaz on the podcast. She's coming to us. Well, she's on vacation, so she's close to the Canadian border, but she's originally in the Washington area, but as you can tell by her accent, as soon as she talks, she is not originally from the state of Washington. So I'll just let everyone discover that for themselves. But most importantly, she's a bodybuilder, and yeah, she's on here to share her health and fitness journey and discuss all things health and fitness. Nancy, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I ask this to every single guest, no matter how boring it gets. What is the weather like today?
Today it's cloudy, but the sun's supposed to come back out. So we shall see. It's been in the 80s, so it's nice.
All right. Well, yeah, that's like similar to what it was here. We just had a massive thunderstorm a couple nights ago that tore down a couple big branches in our front yard. It was weird because I was up at like midnight, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the wind just picked up to be like 70 miles an hour for like an hour and a half, and it was just downpouring. It wasn't even in the forecast. So yeah, I spent the whole day yesterday picking up sticks basically in my front yard when I wasn't editing and doing any of that stuff. But before I really just impress everyone with how great my life has been the last 2 days. Nancy, to start things off, why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're currently at right now?
Well, I started playing softball when I was like 11 or 12, so I've always been very active. Um, as far as bodybuilding, a very good friend of mine became a personal trainer, and so she wanted to train me, and she was a figure competitor. And I saw her and how good she looked, and so after we trained for 3 months, I decided to do a show, and I just took a calendar with all the shows on it, closed my eyes, and picked one, and that's what got me started.
What was your first prep like, having not really that much knowledge of the sport and only training for 3 months? What was that first prep of yours like?
Oh, hard, 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 hard. Because I'd never even been to a bodybuilding show. Um, so a friend of mine that was helping me with it, because I didn't have a coach or anything. She had competed before, and so she gave me my menu and helped me and everything. And peak week, she forgot to tell me to drink water, so I didn't drink any water or nothing for like 4 days. And then when she saw me, she was like, "What's wrong with you?" So I learned my lesson that way. Yeah, yeah, I had to have water.
This whole sport is honestly just trial and error, if you really ask me. So yeah, not having water, going 4 to 5 days without really having water, more props to you, because when I'm that dieted down and I'm not drinking water, good God, I don't know how you would be able to do it. So hey, you learned the hard way. At least you did it first off. At least it wasn't like your last show or anything like that. But I mean, this is also a sport that's always ever evolving. I mean, if you're to look at how the competitors looked 5 years ago as compared to now, it's a whole different look. Being that you've competed in this sport for a while, what have been some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the sport from when you first started to compete to now?
Um, the girls are a lot bigger, muscular. It because when they took out women's bodybuilding, so then the bodybuilders went to physique went to figure, and it went down the line. So, and that's when I started. That's when bikini first started out, and so yeah, that's the change I've seen. That there's a lot more muscle on women now.
Yeah, I've always thought it was funny. Like, if you look at those original shows from like the 80s and 90s, I mean, it is some of those bodybuilders might not even be bikini competitors today. So it's just how much the sport has really taken off when it comes to size and everything. But were there any myths or misconceptions that you had about the sport before you got started, or was it just one of those things where you just want to dive right in and see what happens?
Oh yeah, I thought that going to the gym a couple of days a week, you're going to just get all buffed up, and I don't want to. I was one of those. I just want to look good. I don't want to look muscular. All that, but never
You
ever.
probably were use the T word a lot, toned.
Yeah, I never in a million years ever imagine how hard it is, and what you have to really go through mentally and physically to be a bodybuilder.
And I mean, this is also so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport. I mean, for all the physical change that happens, that mental change as well is, 100 times more important than anything else, really, in my opinion, at least. What has this journey been like for you mentally?
Oh, I'm so much stronger mentally than I ever thought I could be. I was always very timid and very insecure about everything. Just but I know I'm stronger than I once was, and I don't mean physically, but mentally. When you push your body, you're pushing your mind too. So the more you know, the more I see myself changing and lift that heavy weight more than I did last week or whatever, it makes your mind strong. It just makes. But I thank God about everything too. I'm one of those.
Hey, absolutely. I mean, honestly, there's so many people that don't have even the right amount of circumstances to be able to train. So absolutely, I mean, yeah, just being able to recognize that, like, hey, you are a lot luckier than a lot of other people, which is one thing that I've come to realize too, even looking at some people in the gym. I mean, I've had some people that I've talked to in the gym that either they're missing an arm or a leg and they're still working out, and it's just, that to me is one of the most inspiring things. But where does that mentality, you think, come from? Because there are going to be days where you don't want to work out. There are going to be days where you don't want to train, where you're just like, oh my God, I'm just dead tired. I don't want to do anything. And what I think separates people from the general public from bodybuilders is that people in the general public, they'll find that excuse to not train, or they'll just be like, oh, I'm just too tired. I can't work out. Whereas bodybuilders, they dig deep down and they're able to find that why for them of, why I do this and why I compete. Where does that come from for you? Where do you think that deep down, that extra added motivation that just pushes you through on those days comes from?
A couple of things, and we talked about this. My sister is extremely sick. Um, in fact, she just had her leg amputated, but she's on dialysis and she's been sick her whole life, and so she loves, 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 loves watching me, and putting on the muscle and being able to work out. So I do it for her too. When I don't feel good, I just think about her, and I push through that. You have to. And the second part is I'm not somebody that wants to get on stage just to say I got on stage. I've got we have 6 daughters and a son, and I have people looking up to me, and so I don't want to. You get what you put in. I think so. You got to put everything in it if that's what you want.
6 daughters and a son. God, you're just like my late grandma, she had 7 kids, and here's the thing, she had them in an 8-year span, and they were all single births too. So she was pregnant basically for 8 straight years. That poor lady. I don't know how she did it and how she went through it, but she did it. But yeah, I cannot imagine, doing all that with all those kids, especially. But I mean, yeah, I mean, like I told you before, I have an aunt who has MS, and that is inspiring to me as well, because she's in the very rough time of it now. She was first diagnosed, I think, when I was like probably like 4 or 5, and it didn't really hit her until about like 10 years later when it really got bad. And now she's kind of on like the last legs of it, where it's painful to watch, but it's just so inspiring too for me when I talk about, like, what she's going through. I should never really have any complaints about, whether I go to the gym or not. And so I use that as, motivation as well. But like, you're a mom, you have a job, you bodybuild. How are you able to find the time for all of it? Because just having two of those three things, I mean, is enough to drive a person crazy. But the one thing about bodybuilders is that they are able to do kind of like time management magic. I don't know how they do it, but they're able to do it.
You have to figure it out. So I'm a special needs bus driver for Tacoma. So when I'm working, I get up at 4:15. I do cardio. I go to work. On my break, I go to the gym. Then I go back to work. And then I go home and I do more cardio. And I do my food prep and my family, and that's what I do every day.
More power to you. I mean, getting up at 4:15, I cannot imagine doing that. I think I did that once for a job that I had, where the job was working from like 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., like 3 or 4 days a week, and I lasted 3 days, and then I had to quit that job because I was like, yeah, I'm not getting up at I'm not getting up at 4:15 ever again. Well, the thing was, the 2 days before I quit, I didn't get any sleep that night, so I went to work without any sleep and worked 12 hours, and
Oh no.
that was the worst day of my life. I fell asleep like right as soon as I got home, basically. But yeah, that was horrible. But so yeah, I am just naturally not a person that gets up early. But I mean, I also love to talk genetics on this podcast because I hear this all the time. Oh my god, I want her arms, I want his abs, I want their back, and it's like, just want to strangle them, because you got to understand, people, that like you can train just like someone, you can eat just like them, you're not going to get the same results. I could do everything that Jay Cutler does and I'm still not going to look like Jay Cutler, unfortunately. And i
Right.
accept i accept that about the first time I walked in the gym, and I realized that, like, hey, everyone's built differently. But another thing I love to talk about genetics is that, like, everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off when they first get started, and then everyone always has that one body part that just drags behind it. They have to train to oblivion. What was one body part that really took off for you, and what was one body part that you've just had to drag behind?
My shoulders, they popped. I've always had good shoulders. My glutes, whatever a lot of women have to deal with. Yeah, because I'm short. I'm 4'10", 4'11", so my legs are little, but they get big.
Glutes are legs are just the same thing for me anyway, just being 6'3" myself, where it's like, yeah, they're just too long, they're too everything. But what are some of the reactions that you get in the gym seeing a 4'10", 4'11" woman just going in there and lifting a lot of weight? Do you get some nice reactions for that? Because if I saw it in the gym, I'd be like, oh wow, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I do. I get a lot of good, but then I get, it's a constant. How much do you bench? I'm not a bencher. I don't do that. Hardly ever do I bench, but you know, people look at you different. Some people like this look, and quite a few people don't like the look. But that's their problem, not mine.
Oh, I mean, please tell me if it at least doesn't trick every once in a while, where like you're all suited up so like no one can see anything, and then you just take it off and then just see people just jaws drop, especially like when you're on prep and they're like, what's going on?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Take your jacket off, and it's like, oh, do you work out? Nope. I woke up like this.
Oh, that would be my favorite part of a prep. That would be probably the only part of a prep that I enjoy, is just going up to people just in a jacket, and then the situations where you can take it off, and then just like, yeah, that would be fun. Someone's got to like film the reactions that they get from that, because that would be that would be awesome. But I mean, just the whole mentality of the sport is something that's really intense as well. But on top of that mentality, that nutrition, I'm sorry, where it's like, I've told you, that is the reason why I never competed, because I'm a guy that needs to have my beer and my brats and my hot dogs, every once in a while. But what were some of the nutritional changes that you made when you really started to take things seriously in this sport?
Oh, when just to be perfectly honest, I was a skinny fat. I drank, smoked cigarettes. I ate whatever I wanted to eat because I didn't. I was oblivious to healthy choices. I didn't look at any. I just, if I wanted to eat it, I'd eat it. You know. So when I got started into it, everything changed. Everything. Um, like I was telling you, my husband's Filipino and Native American, and he can cook. That's the hard part, is when I'm eating tilapia and asparagus, and they're eating rice and a Filipino dish. It's hard, but yeah, another reason that keeps me going. I've been with my trainer coach this whole entire for 12 years, 11 years, and they are family to me. They're everything. But I check in with him every week, so I know that if I screw up, he's going to know it. And yeah, I don't want to disappoint anybody, especially myself. And that's what you do. If you cheat, you're going to feel so guilty.
Being with a coach for 12 years, that is very rare, especially in this sport, because I've talked to so many people that, they coach shop, and, they just, every year or so they might find a new coach. Like, it's not that constant. So what do you think about your relationship with your coach makes it so special that you're able to stay with them for as long as you have? Because I got to say, like, that is probably about like 10% of the people that I've had on stay with their first coach. Like, it's very rare that people just find that one coach and just stick with them throughout their journey.
We Pete and Apple Grubs is who I'm with, Construction Zone. Um, I think from the very beginning we just hit it off. We just clicked like family. You know, There was one time I thought I was going to quit, and so I separated. They say it was a divorce, but it wasn't. It was a separation. But I went back with my little tail between my legs, and because yeah, they're like family. He's my mentor, but he's like a brother to me. You know, whenever I have an issue or like my sister or me being hurt, um, besides my husband, they're the first people I call. You know, I need that reassurance of everything's going to be okay. So I'm born and raised in Georgia. But as far as me personally, I'm the only one. I don't have any family here except for my husband's. So they kind of took me under the wing, and yeah, I can't imagine not being with them.
And I'm so happy that you found that because, like I said, it is a rarity. And I know, like, the only bad thing about this sport too that I really think is bad about it is that, like, I think that the bad trainers far outweigh the good trainers when it comes to the numbers. So it takes a lot of time to find that trainer that really works for you, which is why I think so many people do coach shop, and they just, after every year they might find a new coach because yeah, there are too many people, like you said before, like you didn't want to just compete to compete, where I've talked to a few dozen of those where they just want to get on stage no matter, what they look like, just so that they can say like, oh yeah, I competed, so then I can start to coach people, and I competed in one amateur show. And it's, yeah, don't even
And
get me
now,
started on those people. We'll talk here for 15 hours and I'll just be, giving them crap the whole time because that is the one area of the sport that I really do not like myself.
well, one thing about Pete is he don't sugarcoat anything. He's not going to tell you what you want to hear. He'll tell you what you don't want to hear. And there was one time in all these years when it came to cardio, I would sit on the bike, watch TV, play my games, just whatever. I wasn't even probably breaking a sweat. And he's like, okay. So I did a show and I come in last. And I was like, he said, how did that feel? I said, well, I hate it. He said, well, next time you'll do what you're supposed to do. So,
Yeah, you honestly need that in a coach because I have found that some coaches, yeah, they kind of are the opposite where they'll just tell you what they want to hear just because they want to take your money and they just want to do all. So yeah, it's once you find that coach who's willing to cut through all the BS and like not just tell you what you want to hear, tell you what you need to hear. I mean, those are the people that you hang on to. I look for that honestly in my personal life too with friends as well, where it's like
yes.
they're the ones that they'll call me out on my crap. They won't be like, "Oh no, Ryan, that's okay that you did that" or something like that. They'll be like, "Why'd you do?" Or just stuff like that, where it's just like they're willing to. That's how you know that you've got real family and real friends behind you. But with this whole sport, I mean, the one thing that I would have never guessed in a million years for a lot of these competitors is that posing is the hardest thing for a lot of them. It's not for everyone, but for if you were to rank like out of the nutrition, the training, and posing finishes in the top two for almost every single guest that I've had on. What is your experience with posing been like?
In my head, I think I'm doing it perfect, but then when I see myself, and it's like, that is not right. That's not right. It's a lot. It's hard work. It's if you're holding a pose and your back isn't killing you when you're done, you didn't do it right. I mean, posing is extremely hard. And I started in figure, but me and you talked about this. With me being so short, in masters, they don't go by height in amateur shows. So I'm up against 5'6", 5'7", and we look,
I've had a few 6 footers figure competitors in Masters, so that would be a definite sight to see.
yeah. So plus I'm bow legged, so putting on them shoes just wasn't my thing. So we switched to physique, and that took off for me. I mean, that was great. But as far as opposing, I'm still every day working hard, and we'll switch up, a couple of tweaks here and there because my posing is going to be different than somebody else's. It's for my body.
Do you think having that background in figure helped you at all when it comes to the physique posing, even though they are like completely different and they're not the same at all? Do you just think having that background helped you, or was it one of those things where physique is just
Oh
so different?
no, most definitely it did. Most definitely, how to get your lats out, and yeah, that helped a lot because it's still the same posing. The quarter turns.
Out of your physique poses, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Uh, Side chest is my favorite. And I have a nice back, but I hate. Yep, got that glute problem. It's getting much better, but yeah. And so I've done. I was going to tell you that out of all these years, I stayed an amateur, and I did nationals last year, and I done universe this year, and became a pro.
And that is awesome. But I do gotta say, thank you for bringing up that. Like, people don't understand. Like, when you're doing a pose, like you said, the back pose, people just think that you just have to worry about your back. No, it's your whole body. You got to worry about
It's your
glutes. You got
whole
to worry
body.
about everything. That is the biggest misconception I think that when it comes to posing, that a lot of people suffer from, is that they think that, like, oh, I'm doing a front double bicep, I just have to worry about my biceps. No, you got to worry about every single part of your body, which is what makes it so hard. Believe me, posing would be easy if it was just, you would just do the body parts that you did. Like, if you're just doing a side chest and you just had to do your chest, it would be easy. But like, you have to make it flow with every other body part. So that's the biggest thing that I think a lot of people who aren't into this sport don't understand about the posing, is that no, it is not just the one body part that the pose is named after, that like you really have to focus on. It is everything, which is probably the hardest thing for so many people.
Oh yeah, you've got to worry about your legs, your especially your quads, your abs, your shoulders, is your hands right? Are they? You know what I mean? It's everything. Plus, you got to hear the judges.
That whole hands thing, I'm sorry, is like the dumbest thing ever. Where it's like, it doesn't make it look more feminine. It just makes it look weirder when you have your hands out as opposed to just closed. Like, just let them have their hands closed, for God's sake. I mean, it's like, what's the, you're trying, is that really gonna make it? What, are you gonna have their pinky out next time then too, or something like that, to try
Right?
to make it? So it's just, I don't. I personally, for me, it's like, just let them do it, just like a regular. It's like, it's not. That one is always, perplexed me, honestly. But this is, I mean, since you're a pro, I always love to ask this question: what was that moment like when they announced your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now? Because for so many of these competitors, winning their pro card, that's the highlight of their career, because that's just the affirmation of, you did it. You can compete in pro shows now. You finally made it. What was that moment like for you?
Shocking. When I went to Universe, um, uh, I'd had a really rough year. I got hurt really bad at work by a student, and so I wasn't mentally, from September to probably January. I wasn't there. I wasn't. I had a lot of issues. I had a concussion and a sprain in my neck from it. So my trainer, he was like, "No, get your shit together. You need to get up. You need to stop this. You're just wasting away." So from Christmas on, I got it back. I was like, okay, this is where I'm going, I'm going, I'm going. So I really wasn't expecting a lot from Universe. I had already done Utah and the Emerald Cup in Seattle. I've done those two shows. And so when I went to Universe, it's like, I feel good. I look better than I ever have. It was a mental thing mostly. So whenever they put me in the middle and prejudging, in my head I was going, oh crap. I'm in the middle, I'm in the middle. But then I thought, don't get so excited. Just, anything can change between now and tonight. And so whenever they did call me at night, it was just unbelievable. Just, yeah, I did it. Yay me. I came out of it on top.
Well, out of the Bible, I just gotta say, like, it takes such a special person to do the job that you do and to deal with some of the people that you do. I mean, it takes a special type of person. I honestly, like, if I got injured or stuff like that in a job, I don't know if I'd keep going back. So more props to you, like, to still go back to that, because yeah, that's just, I mean, it's a special kind of person that does that. Because believe me, like, some of the friends that I know, if that would happen to them, it would have went down maybe a little bit differently after that. But it takes just, yeah, and that is so great that you were able to, win your pro card after doing that too. I mean, it just shows,
Thank you.
you can really accomplish anything. And how did you celebrate? What did you go out to eat after you won your pro card?
Okay, this is going to make you mad. A salad. All I wanted was a salad and a beer. I had a beer. But
God forbid you enjoy yourself for one night.
yeah, I know. I know. Oh, well, I did, believe me. But I say you and I had talked about this before. When you're backstage and you're pumping up and you've got sweets and you've got all this stuff, I'm really not that hungry once it's over. But all I wanted was something. I love salad, so that's what we went and got.
Yeah, I mean, you were probably like the dozenth guest out of like the 400 or 500 bodybuilders I've had on that said salad. So, more power to you. I guess that's a kind of willpower that I don't even want to try to get underneath and see what's going on there, because that is, to me, yeah, I do not understand that. But I mean, post show blues is a big thing that is not talked about as much as it should be, because a lot of people don't understand the fact that you are not going to look like your stage look 24/7. I mean, you are going to have to put on weight, unfortunately. And a lot of people, when they first get started in the sport, they struggle with that because either they don't have a coach, or either, they just, it's just hard for them to really realize. But what was that like for you when you first realized that, like, hey, I am going to have to put some weight on, I'm not going to be able to maintain this look? And has it gotten easier for you to accept that as your years in the sport have gone on?
It was hard. Um, it could be. I think a lot of people, because I'm sure it happens to men too. Um, I hate to say it, but get eating disorders from the sport because it's extremely. It messes with your head. You get everybody said, "Oh, you look great. You look so good," and then you start putting on weight, and it's like, "Oh, you look good since you put your weight on." But that messes with your head. You look normal. I don't want to look normal, you know. But I've learned through the years, don't go crazy after a show. You got to continue drinking all that water so you don't the sodium don't just bloat you up, right? Um, Take it easy. You want something to eat, eat it, but stay clean most of the time. Eat clean because we had a friend that she did a show and on Saturday by Monday she couldn't even wear her shoes. It was awful, and it's because she just filled herself with sodium.
That's the thing that messed me up in college. After working out hard for a couple of months when I was first getting started, I was realizing, hey, I'm not making that many changes. And then I realized that I'm eating ramen noodles almost every day, and that is just pure sodium right there. So I'm just like, hey, that might be the case right there, everyone. So yeah, there is that. But I mean, you brought it up, and I mean, body dysmorphia. Let's be honest, every single bodybuilder has it. You can either have a severe case of it, or they sometimes have like just a small case of it, but they have a little case of it whatsoever. And anyone that says that they don't have it is a liar, especially with
Yep.
bodybuilding. It's a sport where you are judged based on how you look. So people can get very, intense about their look. How do you deal with body dysmorphia? Because that is one thing that, I'm sorry, to me, it's the funniest thing ever, especially when it's bodybuilders, though, because it's like, you guys are some of the most in shape people on the planet. And I've gotten messages from some of my guests being like, do I look ready for my show? And I'm just like, look in a damn mirror, for God's sakes. Like, you look great. So that's the funny part to me. But obviously, it's not funny all the time. But I get a laugh sometimes when I have like the people that are like a week out of their show messaging me, like, do you think I look great? And I'm like, you're an idiot. Just look in the mirror. But how do you personally deal with the whole body dysmorphia that unfortunately goes with the sport?
Um. Okay. So a little side story. I have one of my daughters was a competitive cheerleader when she was younger, and she was a flyer, and she put on a little bit of weight, and so they put her down as a base, and so she became anorexic, and she was in rehab for it. Um, but then she grew up. She got a lot better, and she grew up, and um, it hit her again, and she's much better, but she's in rehab right now. So watching her and hearing her has definitely helped me because I look at her and tell her how beautiful she is and how great she looks. And I got to realize people are saying that to me too, and I can't look at it in a different, you know, just, I don't know. I guess I'm just different.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one thing about this podcast that I was just so not aware of, especially in the female community, just how prevalent eating disorders are and how big of a thing. Like, it shocked me to my core. Like, I knew that some people had some eating disorders, but like, just how many of them, especially on this podcast, talked about either their past of them or they have family members that are, just how much it impacts the female community. It really shocked me. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was, I mean, that just adds even more fuel to your fire, I guess. And that's just, and I'm glad that she's getting the help that she gets, and I hope that she, recovers. And yeah, it is a tough illness. I've talked to a lot of people that suffer from it, so I can't imagine, what she's going through. But just just with, everything about this sport being so uncertain, whether it comes to like how am I going to look tomorrow, how am I going to look, just because it's so uncertain, how do you deal with the whole stress of everything? Because stress is something that impacts the body so much more than it should be talked about. I mean, people are not talking about how much stress impacts it. How do you try to maintain your stress levels? Because just hearing about your life, hearing about everything that's going on, I don't know how your blood pressure isn't like 200 right
Ah,
now.
I have a lot of faith, and people might think this is silly. It works for me. So when I'm all stressed out, I just start thanking God for everything. Thank you for my house. Thank you for my car. Thank you for me doing cardio. Thank you for this journey I'm on. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then so all that other stuff kind of gets pushed in the back because I realize how lucky or how blessed I really am. I know it don't work for everybody, but it works for me.
I pray to the God of cars, Henry Ford, for my car, but I pray for God. I pray for the real God for everything else, everyone. But otherwise, I always just
Right.
so thank you, Henry Ford. But otherwise, God gets all the other credit, for that for that at least. But no, that's a joke there. But I mean, like, just with the whole,
I don't know. It's hard. It's extremely hard. I just somehow, I don't know. Maybe I was just born to a strong family.
I was even watching a documentary on like the nuclear missile silos that they have, especially out in the Dakotas, and the people that they hire, like they do a test where they are like the least stressful people on the planet. And I don't know how they find them, but those are the guys that might have to push the button when the time comes. And they literally are just like you hear them talk in interviews, and they're just the most calm individuals that have ever existed. So I guess some people might just be born with it. I guess that there's a thing with that where it's like, God, give me that where your blood pressure is like perfect all the time, no matter what you. And then they have some of those pilots too, where like some of those pilots, they might be like in free fall if they get hit or something like that, and then next thing you know, their blood pressure is still exactly the same. And yeah, that is a gift, everyone. So if you are one of those people out there, enjoy it, because believe me, not everyone has that themselves. But we talked about cardio before, but I mean, I hate it more than life itself. I've said this so many times where it's I go for walks, but just the running part you will never catch me doing. What is your relationship like with cardio? Because unfortunately, when you become a bodybuilder, you sort of have to sign a deal with the devil when it comes to cardio.
Yeah, not my favorite. I do it, but not my favorite. Um, I'm starting to run, but I'm running up hills because I got to get that the glutes. But when I first started, I was getting shin splints, and but that's what works for me is running with my legs. So I have to do it. I had to figure out how to make it easier. I don't know. Cardio is not my favorite. I would rather lift weights, but so many other people are like that. But I don't have an excuse. I have a treadmill, I have a stepper, elliptical, a bike, so I don't have any excuse not to do it.
Believe me, you are not in the minority. I've talked to all these bodybuilders, and only two of them have said that cardio is their favorite thing. And for that, I always tell them, why are you even a bodybuilder then? Just become a marathon runner or something like that. I don't, which that's a whole different type of mental illness that I don't even want to tap into, because I have a friend that does marathons, and every time he finishes, I just want to be standing there with a sign saying, you didn't have to do this. At the end of the race or something like that. But that don't even get me started on that. But I mean, sleep is also, it's the most important thing when it comes to health and fitness lifestyle, and anyone's lifestyle in general. And say this a million times, if you disagree with me on that, go pull an all-nighter and tell me how that works out for you. When you're a bodybuilder, your sleep can get so bipolar, but then also being a mom and everything else that you do, your sleep is already kind of messed up to begin with. How do you even cope with that? Because I'm sorry, like, sleep is the one thing that I treasure more than anything else. Like, if I don't get the proper amount of sleep, I know I'm not going to work out. I'm just one of those people where it's like, if I get less than like 3 or 4 hours, like, there's no way.
Oh, I've never been a big sleeper, so 5 hours to me is a lot. So I usually, when I'm working, I try to go to sleep at 10 o'clock, and not all the time, but I try to make it at 10. But sometimes at 11, I get up at 4. But
I sleep a little bit longer. Like, I can go 8 to 9 hours, but it's always interrupted sleep because our damn dog will, at like 5 a.m., he'll start barking and going crazy. So that will wake me up for about a minute, and then I'll go back to sleep. Then he'll start barking and going crazy again at about 6:30, and that'll wake me up, and then I'll go back to sleep. Then he'll do it again at about 7:30, and then I'll get up and go to sleep, and then I'll finally get up around like 8 or 9, and then that. So it's always I don't think I've ever had uninterrupted sleep, at least in like the past like 4 or 5 years. So it's
Oh, jeez.
something that you got to get used to. But except when I'm on vacation. But then again, when I'm on vacation, then we'll go to my grandma and grandpa's or anything like that, and then those people get up at like 4 o'clock, and then I'm the one that sleeps in the living room, so then I'm the one that has to get up
So
then when
you
they
had
get
to
up,
get up.
because they'll be making
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm sorry, when you smell bacon, I'm not staying asleep. The moment I smell bacon, I'm waking up, and I'm good to go for the rest of the day regardless. But yeah, so there's that. So I just wish, and even when I was living on my own right before the pandemic, I mean, for some reason I think my body was just so used to just getting up in little bursts and then doing that. So that was a struggle myself as well. But I mean, like we talked about before, like you had that myth that so many women have where they just want to get toned, which needs to be erased from the English language because I hate it more than life itself. But what advice do you have for people now that still have that fear of like, oh, I just don't want to go to the gym and, lift weights because I'm afraid I'll get too bulky?
It's not going to happen.
And if it does, I will pay you my life savings to train with you then.
Right? Don't worry about that. Just worry about your food is number one. And if you don't want to, if you think you're going to be bulky or whatever, and you just want to tone, use light weights, use bands. But, start off, I don't know, to me, when I first started seeing changes in my body, that's when it clicked and I wanted more and more and more and more. I guess it's like getting tattoos. Can't get just one. But I don't know what, I'll try and help as much as I possibly could, but people have to make up their own minds. You can only do so much for somebody. I had a friend at work that she wanted me to help her get in shape, but she didn't want to give up her food and she didn't want to go to the gym. It's like, all right.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless you want to, run a marathon every day, then that's probably the only option for you, really.
Yeah, yeah. Watch what you're. Yeah, but I do want to say that one thing that I am truly, truly blessed with is my husband is my biggest supporter. He doesn't go to my shows. He's been to a few of them, but it's not his thing. That's not what he does. Um, but he 100% supports me in every way possible.
Well, first of all, those shows are way too damn expensive. I don't care what anyone says. Like if the one show that I did end up going to, so I went to my first show like 3 weeks ago, and it was $35 for just the prejudging, and then it was $40 for the finals. So it's $75, everyone. So that is not. I finally realized, because I was like, how are these promoters making any money? And then when I paid my ticket, I was like, oh, that's why. So you figure that out at least. But yeah, it is very expensive, and the fact that, I mean, yeah, having that support system it means the world to so many people, because I've talked to people that don't have that support, and it just makes that journey even harder. Excuse me, harder than it needs to be. And yeah, so having that support system is by far one of the more important things that I've discovered on this podcast. But I think this every single time I have a bodybuilder on, regardless of how many I've talked to, and I understand their why, but I still think to myself, why do they do this to themselves? Why do they? I mean, after hearing all these prep brain stories and after hearing all these stories about the sport, I just think, why do they put themselves through this? And even you have probably said this to yourself at least a million times, even during prep. And if you deny it, I'll accept it, but deep down I'll be like, she's lying, everyone. But like, I mean, just what is your why? And I bet you still even hear that from just people on the street or friends that you might have. It's like, Nancy, why do you do this to yourself? What is your why that you like to respond to them
Sometimes I don't even know.
with?
Um, because I like it. I love it. I mean, this is my passion. Um, yes, every show, come 2 weeks out, I'm going, why am I doing this? Why? This is horrible. Why am I doing it again? And then I'll do it again. And I always say, this is my last show. But nobody believes me anymore. So now I'm just going to say, as long as I can be on this journey, the, the good Lord put me on, I'm going to keep going as long as I can.
In the 4 years that I've done this podcast, I have had a bodybuilding guest on, and she's been on every year, and every year she's told me that it's her last show. So, I understand what you're saying. When after a while, I just tell her, I was like, Well, maybe in 50 years, maybe when you're 85 or maybe when you're 90 or whatever, you'll be retired. But it's just, yeah, I've heard that from so many people where, yeah, this sport is an addiction where it's like, yeah, it's hard to let it go. And that's what I think makes it, such a dynamic sport is, I've always said with all the stuff that you guys go through with preps and the fact that you guys aren't making any money really doing this, I mean, that is just some of the most inspiring stuff to me. It's like that they still have competitors, and that really just proves that this sport, you know, it's all about the sport and the dedication to the sport. Because believe me, if you're doing this for money, you're never going to make anything unless you win the Olympia, and even then, it's not that much. So yeah, that's the most impressive part to me, at least. But if there was one thing that you could change about the sport of bodybuilding, if someone were to come up to you and say, Nancy, you can change one thing about the sport and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Well, I think me and you talked about this, and you opened my eyes. The money, how expensive it is for all of it. I mean, just to go to Universe was close to $4,000, and now I got to buy my own pro card, which
Wait, you have to buy the card?
$250, which I didn't even realize that either. But that's okay, I'll buy it. But yeah, I think, and not just because I became a pro, but I think the pros should get a lot more than what they get. They've earned it. You know,
You shouldn't have to pay for your card. That is ridiculous. I do not. That is, I honestly, that's the first time that I've ever heard this on the podcast. No one's ever told me that you had to pay for your pro card, because I never really brought it up though, because I didn't even think that that was a thing. I just thought common decency, they'd give it to you because you earned it and you already paid your entry fee to the show. But good God, yeah, that is definitely something. I mean, $250 just for a piece of plastic and just a don't even get me started about my college diploma, everyone. That's a little bit even more expensive for that piece of paper, but that's a whole different story. But I mean, Nancy, I'd love to have you on in a year from now to just talk about what you've been up to and what you've accomplished since then. Where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at in your overall life? What are some things that you'd like to have accomplished when I have you back on a year from now?
well, I just got my personal training certification, and I would like to be helping more people get in shape. As the older we get, we need it a lot more. Um, Healthy. I mean, when me and you talked about it, I have a small aneurysm, a brain aneurysm that is still there that gets to me sometimes. But yeah, I just want everything, all my family, I want everybody to be healthy and happy and out of the craziness of this world is in right now. Things that go back to a little bit of normalcy.
Honestly, I totally forgot that. And everyone, why she's saying like we talked about before, because we did record a podcast before this, but like the audio and video was a little sketchy, which happens on about like 5% of these podcasts. I will publish that first original podcast on my Patreon page, everyone, so you can go and check that out, because that is where I publish, some of like the first drafts of that stuff and all this other special stuff. But yeah, we talked about her aneurysm, and that to me is just like I totally forgot about that, because honestly, I had two guests on after I talked to you, and so honestly, a lot of the information goes in one ear and out the other when you're talking
Right.
to this many guests. But I totally forgot about that. That is incredible. And for anyone that doesn't know what an aneurysm is, could you just like a brief definition of what it means to have an aneurysm? Because that's something that like I've heard it a ton of times, but like even before I talked to you, didn't really know the specifics of it.
Yeah, I didn't know until they told me I had it. Um, One of the blood vessels that goes to my brain has a bump in it. And so if it swells up and bursts, and I've only got a few minutes to get to the hospital or it'll kill me. And where it's at, it's a dangerous spot because they could like hit something up there. But what they would do is it looks like the inside of a baseball. It just wraps around it like a cage to keep it. If it grows, then I'll do the surgery. But as right now, it's staying the same.
Yeah, please tell me you're living within like a mile of a hospital. I'd be like living right next to a hospital and basically, and just like always just like, okay, am I like within, well, how am I, because that I cannot. So talk about stress. Good God, how do you, geez, you really must be just born with low stress, with a low stress tolerance or something like that, because More power to you, everyone. Again, the more I talk to some of these bodybuilders, the more impressive it is that a lot of them just compete in the first place, and because a lot of people like don't understand that personal struggle that a lot of these guys go through, and it's
Oh, you could ask my kids; they don't think that I'm very vociferous with them. And yeah, I've got my moments. I sit in the bathroom and cry just like anybody else.
oh, I'd say my mom is very stressful, and then she'd tell you that she isn't. But yeah, that's a tale as old as time. That the offspring of a person saying, "Oh yeah, they're like super stressed out," and they're like, "No, they're not." So yeah, I hear that a lot. But again, Nancy, I cannot thank you for coming on. It was great talking to you. Is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I Pete and Apple Grubs, my girl Kelly, and my husband Raymond. He's my number one.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I'll leave a link to all that stuff down below. And again, Nancy, I can't thank you enough for coming back on and talking to us. I really appreciate it. And I cannot wait to have you on a year from now to see where you've been at. And I honestly think, it's so inspiring to talk to you. And everyone go and check out our Instagram page. I'll leave a link down below. Buyer beware, you will get inspired to get off that couch and stop eating those Twinkies. But again, Nancy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone. This is Ryan Johnson, DD on the Spots, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.